Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this workshop session, which is entitled Someone Like Me. I'm glad you could join us. We've got two exciting presentations for you to listen to this afternoon, and I'm delighted to say the first one is from Louisa Arnold. Before we go to Louisa, just can I draw your attention to how the session is going to work today. During the presentation, you can ask questions or add comments by using the icons on the side of your screen. Feel free to do that as we go along. And we'll take questions at the end of each presentation and at the end of the session as well. So please do that. Okay, we'll make a start. Louise Arnold is the regional lead for Project 500. And she works for Kent Sport. Kent Sport is the active partnership for Kent. As the workforce and coaching lead for Kent, Louisa, who has been in that role since 2010, has been leading the Project 500 project, which is a regional initiative which began in 2013. Developed by the active partnerships to address the gender imbalance in coaching. Project 500 aims to recruit, develop and retain more women in coaching by creating a supportive and positive network across the Southeast and beyond. And so this fits very nicely into our topic today, which is creating a workforce which is more representative of the community. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Louisa.
Thank you, David. And thanks for the invite for being part of your conference today. So yes, as David said, I'm going to be speaking about Project 500. And the focus we're going to be looking at today is very much about supporting that person like you. So I have got some support today because the slides, we had a little bit of an issue. So I will be asking for the next slide, please. Thank you. And it's just not in presentation mode at the moment. So if you
Okay. How's that?
Lovely, thanks very much. Okay, so as David said, it's a regional initiative across the southeast of England, and the 7 active partnerships came together to create it back in 2013. And it started off as a small pilot project, and the idea was to support female coaches across every stage of their coaching journey. And initially we focused on quite localised projects, recruiting and developing female coaches within each of the counties. But as the project has evolved, we've tended to focus our work now on an online community, and that's centred around Twitter and Facebook, with additional engagement opportunities through webinars and podcasts. But what we do recognise is what the real world's like for female coaches, instructors and leaders, but we like to focus on the positives wherever possible. If we could have the next slide, please. So the UK Coaching Workforce Principles are a great way for organisations to think about how they can consider all elements to create a more representative and diverse workforce. And we believe that the work we do as part of Project 500 now sits best around the looking after people part. Because what we do is we try and provide a range of needs-led support, because we regularly listen to the needs of our workforce and provide that support accordingly. We try to understand their wants and needs, and we make sure we communicate regularly with that workforce, and that is through mainly an online community. And really importantly, we celebrate the success of our workforce, and our organisation really has that culture to value and respect them. And we try and, wherever possible, provide and facilitate ongoing opportunities to recognise and reward. And I'm going to go through a few of those as the presentation proceeds. So if we can have the next slide, please. So in terms of what the research says, in 2019, the UK Coaching Report that looked at highlighted a series of gender differences in their results. So it talked about almost half of male coaches. So almost half of male coaches refer to themselves as a coach, whereas only 32% of females say the same thing. So they might be more likely to say that I just help out, so I'm not actually a coach. Male coaches are more likely to progress to coaching through participating themselves rather than female coaches. So those statistics were around 31% of male coaches progressed into coaching, and whereas only 17% of females progressed into coaching from participating themselves. Female coaches are significantly more likely to see their role as a builder of confidence and self-esteem, promoting health and well-being and getting people active. whereas male coaches tend to see their role as developing technique and teaching skills and helping people achieve their individual goals. So female coaches are significantly likely to feel that being friendly and approachable makes a great coach. The importance of building a rapport and developing good relationships and creating a warm and welcoming environment are all key qualities of a great coach. And so for us and Project 500, looking at this research, we felt that our support really needed to reflect the research. And as we see on the next slide, please. This is what we do to support female coaches. So we focus our support around providing top tips. We look at how we can promote and provide development opportunities, look at celebrating women in coaching, helping other coaches connect with one another, and also sharing those real life experiences. We kind of see ourselves as a bit of a coaching buddy, really, and female coaches can engage as much or as little as they like. And we think that we'll always be there for them because we recognise that life changes and your involvement in coaching may change along with that. Could I have the next slide, please? So as you can see there, these are a few of the posts that we share on social media. They tend to be focused around infographics and short articles and interesting blog posts. We find that cross-sport subjects are really popular with our audience, especially the topics around self-care, psychological and emotional support. Again, things that we feel we provide really well for female coaches, and it goes down really well with the audience as well. So we recognise that there's a lot of information available, but what we look out for is things that we feel our audience might be interested in. Because as I mentioned previously, the importance of looking after people is really to understand what it is that they want and need. And we spend a lot of time listening to our audience, observing their behaviour on social media. We find that if we provide these infographics and then links to further information, it provides an opportunity for those people who want to delve a little bit deeper. But we also recognise that actually the workforce, some of them may be full-time coaches, deliverers, but actually, and equally, many of them are individuals that deliver perhaps 1 or 2 hours a week maximum, and they've got many other commitments in their lives. So providing these top tips really starts to help. We could have the next slide, please. So that second area is around recognising and celebrating female coaches. And for us, it's not just only their contribution to coaching, but it's also about how those personal achievements has been a real highlight for us. And we recognise that the opportunity for female coaches to share what they're doing has gone down really well with our audience. And these posts are the ones that reach the furthest, and they are on that positive. And many of these inspirational stories of people like me are definitely influencing others to get involved. Next slide, please. A key focus for us is very much about sharing real life experiences of female coaches. When you look out and around, we find that there's a number of articles around high performance coaches, perhaps professional coaches, but not so many of those people that are actually delivering day to day in their local community. So in September 2019, we started a campaign called I Can, You Can. And it was very much about sharing the stories of the real female coaches in the Southeast that were working at various levels and across sports and activities. And it was really about how can we share those stories and encourage other women to get involved. We had a blog site that hosted the stories, and we had social media posts that were focused on individuals and then encouraged people to read their story in full. So this campaign led us on to our first podcast, where we spoke to 3 female coaches from different sports about their experiences. And we found that it was really well received to actually hear those stories. They weren't necessarily high performance coaches or high profile coaches. They were people that were like me in the local community delivering, who had many of the same perhaps insecurities or confidence issues. And actually it happens to all of us. We've recorded 2 more podcasts this year, looking at the experiences of coaches during lockdown, and then also the experiences of coaching as coaches as they return to coaching practice. For us, it's so important that not only do those podcast stories help other people, but actually giving coaches the opportunity to be part of that podcast when they normally probably wouldn't be invited onto coaching or sports podcasts. was really important. And the feedback we get from those coaches that have been involved has been really positive, and it's given them a real sense of pride and passion that they've already got that they can share with others. Can I have the next slide, please? So obviously we can't escape what's happened over recent months, and there's obviously been an impact on what it is that we provide as Project 500. And so we had to review the support that we provide. And back in March, we took a decision to kind of stop and actually look at and observe the behaviours of our coaches on social media. So actually what we found was that some of those coaches are actually quite overwhelmed with everything that was going on. So we focused primarily on self-care. We didn't go into providing lots of development opportunities because we didn't feel that that's what our audience needed at the time. So that was where we started. But then as time progressed, we started to see that engagement levels varied over the months. And some coaches would be online regularly for a week or two, and then they'd disappear for a little while. And as I said earlier on, we're very much engage as much as you like, and we'll always be here for you. So we certainly saw a fluctuation in those engagement levels over time. So we tended to sort of move into sharing general information and then engaging with individual coaches as and when they needed our support, or as and when they were ready to re-engage. And then the next part there was very much about, as the engagement started to increase, kind of perhaps into May and into June, we then looked at how we could provide development opportunities at the right time. So we promoted development opportunities and encouraged our female coaches to review their experience of that development opportunity. So rather than just promote them, we actually wanted to engage the audience and find out what they thought. We were also able to deliver a Q&A session with Judy Murray, and that was on Zoom and really popular, and again gave coaches the opportunity to hear about somebody's experiences. And perhaps we see Judy Murray as a high profile coach, but a lot of the experience she had resonated with our whole audience. And then towards the end of June, we hosted a webinar again exploring coaches' feelings about returning to coaching, and how they were feeling that particular time as guidance started to change and sports and activities started to open up again. So if I could have the next slide, please. Hopefully you can see that actually what I wanted to finish with really was about sharing what our audience have said and what they say back to us around the support that we provide. Because for us, it's all about providing information, providing opportunities at the right time for our coaches. So as you can see, some of the comments there from some of the coaches around inspiring others. So seeing what we've done has encouraged somebody else to get involved in coaching. The comment down the bottom there about hearing from other coaches, to know that we're all going through the same challenges at that time. And then things around kind of Twitter feed being a useful prompt for people to look at appropriate articles and things. So finally, the final slide, please. Again, very much just comments that I think reflect that we've got our approach right for our audience at the moment. So it's very much around, how do we recognise that female coaches are, juggling lots of other things in their lives and not perhaps putting them under pressure to access support and development opportunities. So thank you for listening. If you've got any questions about the approach that we take, if you could just pop the last slide up, please. That just gives you a little bit more information around at Female Coaches. You'll find us on Twitter, and Project 500 UK is where you'll find us on Facebook. So although we're based in the sort of southeast, obviously social media goes much broader than that. So please do kind of connect with us if we can help at all.
Louisa, thanks very much. That's very, very, very interesting. I've just got a couple of questions immediately on the back of that, if I can use my position to ask you that. So the program's been going quite a long time now, isn't it? I mean, 2013, is that correct, when it started? And you referenced in your talk about responding to the needs. If we just take the COVID situation out for the moment, which has really sort of stirred up the pot, how were the needs changing from 2013 to, let's say, the beginning of 2020 before COVID happened? What did you see that sort of journey happening?
Okay, I guess from the start, a lot of our work tended to focus directly with kind of the sort of perhaps bigger national governing bodies of sport, looking at where they were trying to encourage more females into coaching. And perhaps at the early stages, we looked at supporting some female-only level 1 courses, for example, and how we could support women on their first steps into their coaching journey. As we've progressed over the last few years, we found that actually lots of the governing bodies are able to provide that support directly to coaches, and lots of them are starting to provide specific women's initiatives and things. So what we found is actually our support has moved much more very cross sport and bringing the communities together, providing networking opportunities, and also just that recognition of, you know, the importance of looking after yourself as a coach, and how we can do that together.
Yeah, and equally, in terms of the age profile, in terms of the female coaches that are engaging in this, has that altered at all, or what patterns have you seen in that?
That one's tended to be quite kind of consistent across the board. I think because of the social media channels that we use and we've developed over the last probably 18, well, it's more than that now, probably 2.5 years. Because of, you know, funding constraints and things, we'd love to be active on Instagram and other things as well. But we've focused on the two mediums that we started with and we've developed. So that is probably late 20s to sort of mid 50s. But that's not to say that we haven't engaged women across sort of the age groups with other specific projects that have happened in each county.
And my last question to put you at this point, because we'll come back later, is in terms of spreading the message to sort of new female coaches who got onto this, how much has word of mouth played a role in it? How sort of intensive have you had to be in terms of promoting it, or is it just sort of spread naturally?
I think over the year we're actually finding more people are approaching us now. So we were probably shocked and delighted when Judy Murray dropped into our inbox to offer her services for a Q&A session. So for us, I think spreading the message and perhaps just in connecting with the right influencers has been a key thing for us. So actually those influential coaches that link to what we do and then have wider networks has certainly helped us grow. I think promoting what we do to wider organisations. So whenever I have meetings in the county, I always speak to partners about, you know, here's an opportunity to support your female coaches. So locally, we try and drive it that way. But obviously, nationally, it's sharing our case studies and our great stories with the likes of Sport England and Women in Sport and other organisations as well. So it's a bit of both, really. I think the network on Twitter and on Facebook certainly kind of drives itself. And you often see lots of coaches tagging other people into posts or copying in. And then we pick up new followers and the audience that way as well.
Great, Louisa, thanks very much. That's really interesting. Just a reminder to people who are listening in that if you've got any questions, please don't hold on to them. Pop them in the question box, and we can take them at the end now for Louisa as we sort of bring the two sessions together. But Louisa, thanks very much. We'll speak again soon. Okay, now onto our onto our next presentation. And I'm glad to be joined by Emma Gillen, Sam Bickmore and Samia Sawney. Emma Gillen and Sam Bickmore are from the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham. And they're here today to give us some insight into the Breaking Boundaries project that they've been helping to deliver in their part of London. And really excited to hear about that. And again, this contributes to our sort of workforce agenda of trying to create a workforce that is more reflective of the community. A little information on Emma. Emma has worked for the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham for 22 years in a host of sports and development and healthy lifestyle programmes. Over the last 2 years, Emma has provided the local leadership and support, along with Essex Cricket, for the Breaking Boundaries project, which is aiming to bring local individuals and organisations together to improve community cohesion using cricket as the tool. So really keen to hear about it. And I'll say, Emma, over to you.
Thanks, David, and thanks again for the same as Louisa inviting us to sort of be a part of this and sort of share a little bit of our story. So I'm sort of going to give a little bit of background just about the project, sort of just a very quick area. We're sort of invited sort of towards the back end of 2017 to be one of the cities or one of the boroughs to represent London, to put in the application to the Spirit of 2012, who are funding the project, sort of looking at, as we've said, sort of looking at community cohesion across the borough in specific wards, but using cricket as the tool. So, yeah, we were successful, but sort of where we were sort of linking in with, as I said, funded by Spirit of 2012, the project's managed by the Youth Sport Trust and Sporting Equals. So bringing their expertise of managing different projects nationally, sort of bringing that sort of onto sort of for us as a local level, but nationally across, there's 5 cities in total across the country. So it's sort of Bradford, Birmingham, Manchester, Slough, and us within Barking and Dagenham, sort of representing London. Sort of where the local authority fits in. So I sort of we're the host of the project and sort of overall sort of manage the project for the local authority, and sort of do a lot of work with Essex Cricket Foundation as our cricket partner. So we're sort of covering sort of all bases, sort of across, as I say, sort of the borough and sort of within the cricket community. So for us, it was sort of a brand new project, sort of looking at, you know, okay, what do we need? We need someone to sort of help within the borough drive this forward. So within, we're sort of looking at how we were sitting within sort of the how we sit in London and what areas we were going to be looking at. So as you can see, you know, from probably a lot of you, we know we sit in northeast London, one of the we did used to be one of the smallest population boroughs. We're now sort of about 8th smallest, probably one of the quickest growing boroughs across the whole of London, and definitely change in ethnicity. Since I started, I mean, I have been Barking and Dagenham, as I said, over 20 years. The population change has gone from, I mean, when I started, population of white British within the borough was 92%. We're foreseeing that with next year's census will probably be about 32% white British. So a massive change, 60% change within 20 years. And then also sort of where we've looked at that within the wards that we've chosen for the project. One ward, sort of Abbey Ward, sits in Barking. So it's the largest ward population-wise within the borough. But it's also, again, sort of looking at census information, it's the ward that has the most sort of population has changed. Sort of again, between the two censuses, 91% of the borough is different from the last census to the census before. So massive population migration out of that ward. Maysbrook in the middle of the borough, sort of sitting on the Dagenham side. It is one of the smallest wards in the borough, but again, looking at the sort of the different areas that we need to look at within the project, both of the wards sort of looking at sort of quite high racism issues within the borough, and sort of racist hate crimes sort of sitting sort of quite high. So where we're sort of looking at community cohesion with the project, wanting to sort of get sort of utilise these two sort of wards so we can sort of try and make a difference. So as I said, you know, we needed someone to sort of try and move the project forward. So looking at community recruitment, so looking at someone that was local, that would be of an age that we can sort of work with young people within the borough, and not just sort of having a sporting background, but sort of having an understanding of how it feels to maybe not fit in and have issues where they've been part of projects before. So this is where Sam came along, and as you can see, you know, for us it was a jump into the unknown. Sam is very young; it was his first full-time job, and obviously he's going to come on in a minute and tell you a little bit more. But it comes straight out of college. So when he actually started with us, he was only 17, so had never sort of had any real dealings with local authority, sort of how the ins and outs of working with local authority. But did have sort of experience of working and sort of being with young people out in the community from different activities he was part of, but then had a passion that he wanted to sort of help and sort of make changes and things like that. So we sort of looked at, obviously taking him on, but it was a learning curve for us, sort of having a young person, and it was the first time I'd sort of, Sam will talk a little bit about the apprenticeship, but having an apprentice as well, whereas sort of normally we get a member of staff and they just go straight in, working, full time, and sort of have usually got some sort of background information and things. But as I say, Sam was very, very new, so having to spend time, so a lot of my time, and I suppose that's where we're sort of looking at the staff, sort of supporting staff, was supporting Sam in understanding the ins and outs of working for a local authority, of working with different organisations, whether they were community organisations or council departments, how to sort of word letters, how to word emails, sort of all the bits and pieces, sort of supporting him through sort of that whole period of time of getting used to sort of, as I say, building on sort of it's not just putting in a text or anything, it's understanding the sort of the moving it all into different sort of speaking sort of things. So if I pass on to Sam, he'll sort of talk now a bit about his personal journey, and then obviously where we've then gone on to the project, and sort of how we've recruited champions and coaches and things. So Sam. Can't hear you, Sam.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So this role really appealed to me as it was a community project and it was bringing people together through sport. I was really heavily discriminated against when I was younger playing sport, and at the time it was the worst feeling. So being able to run a project like this is great, as I can make a difference in understanding how people may feel when they're left out of things and being discriminated against. With the apprenticeship and training, so as part of this project, we've been getting training and being trained to become level 3 health and community sport officers. So because the project is national, each coordinator from the 5 cities will go down to Loughborough University for 3 days out of a month, and will be trained by professional youth sport trust and street game tutors on all aspects of level 3. So some of the things being like first aid courses, managing challenging behaviour, and the different types of community sports that we can run. And there was a lot of classroom based things, but we also did practical things and put in what we've learned into tests with one another. So we kind of knew what we was doing when we got back into our cities. With the relationship building, because it was my first ever project and the first show I've ever done, everything was kind of new to me. And one of the first things I learned, speaking to people, the local team, and speaking to people in Barking Dagenham, was building trust with them relationships, and building relationships as part of the project and being able to speak to them and communicate with them really helped me, as I was able to work with them in a positive relationship, and then asking them for stuff was really easy, and it really helped me from the start of the project. So building trust across the organisation. So building trust with local organisations and teams who I'd be in contact with a lot of the time and who I'd work with on the project is important. I was lucky because when I first came into the team with Emma and Samir, they was really supportive with me. And as it was my first time role, they kind of guided me through everything, as Emma said. But when I became confident enough to do things myself, I kind of went off and did it. So it was really, really helpful to have that kind of support when I first started. I also work for, obviously I'm employed by the Barking Dagenham Council, and we've done small things for them. And one of the courses that we went on right at the start of the year was the Building Resilient Communities training I received. So it was a 6-week course all about different faiths and religions and how people's perceptions of them are changed through things like media. We learned about like far right wing and left wing views, and we got some really good speakers in to run the sessions. And the whole 6 weeks was really good for me because it kind of incorporated into my role as a community coordinator, and I learned key aspects when I'm going into the community to kind of speak to people. Yeah, next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So with the community champions, we have to recruit 14 to 25-year-olds from community organisations that can represent the voice of the community and let young people be heard over generally adults in position of power. So we have to set like perceptions and attitudes towards the youth of today, and they also have to be within the 2 target roles we spoke about. So Abbey and Maysbrook, and we were developing a local workforce. So the next generation of volunteers and deliverers, and their whole training and development looks at life skills to kind of support their future education, careers, and personal development. With the recruitment of the volunteers, so me and the project activator, Samir, we go out to organisations and speak to their champions and leaders, and becoming a community champion is a great way to improve your leadership skills. And we would tell them that out of this, they might be able to put on their CVs that they've kind of helped run a project and helped design a project with them. and we also offer them a lot of trainings and on like communities and faiths throughout the year. So Aidan, so right at the start of the project, we worked with a project called Havering Mind, and we worked with them for a little while, but it wasn't the right time for them to be on the project. However, one of their champions one of the people on their project called Aidan wanted to kind of stick with us and work with us. So Aidan came to our first ever event in 2018, which was our city leadership event with Havering Mind, and he was really nervous, and he was kind of always putting his headphones on and taking 5-minute breaks walking out of the room because he suffers with anxiety. And ever since that event, Aidan's kind of been working with us to develop his own role in sports and really become a member of the project. And so since then, Aidan's helped us run events and kind of promoting breaking boundaries. And we do weekly cricket, but before COVID, we used to do weekly cricket sessions, and Aidan used to kind of help us on that and kind of be a coach to that. And also when COVID-19 hit in March, Aidan wanted to be kind of helping the community even more. And so he volunteered at a local food bank at Barking and Salvation Army, and he was kind of doing food boxes and serving hot food to the people in the community. So from where Aidan started to where he's kind of now, he's grown massively as a person, and kind of his individual role has changed massively. So with the wider workforce, like the coaches and the community organisations, they have to be from a local or community to ensure they can connect to residents, partners, and in the local system of community needs. Otherwise, at the end of the 3-year project, they move on to somewhere else, and there's no legacy of the project because part of this project is having a legacy and kind of having a difference in the local area. So it's about mixing generations to change those perceptions of attitudes towards historic beliefs and misunderstandings of other cultures, faiths, and ethnic groups. So another story we have was from Brian. Brian came onto the project in 2019. He was previously part of a rehab team, and through speaking to Essex Cricket, he was introduced to breaking boundaries. So Brian was an assistant coach for Essex Cricket and would often kind of help coach the breaking boundaries tasks and sessions. He's worked so hard over the last couple of years, and last year he actually got a Volunteer of the Year award, which was like a massive achievement for him. So he's kind of still working and helping on the project. Also, we have our coach Cannon. So our coach Cannon's from Essex Cricket, and he kind of helps us on the project with all the sessions we need to run. So we kind of go to him for any sessions we want to put on, and he has really been like a role model to Aidan and Brian. Because when they're at the sessions, Aidan and Brian will go with him, and he will not only coach the kids, but he'll kind of guide them through and give them tips and pointers of how they can better themselves and become coaches. And the last thing was the community champions and activation grants. So it was to ensure the community champions were given responsibility and to be heard as a young person in kind of social in the project as the activation grant. So the young activists had to kind of design, develop, deliver, and debrief their projects, which have been kind of being to run different community groups together involving young people and their families. And it's also about creating a safe environment for them to show their community and how they can make a difference. So developing a sense of belonging and how they can achieve a goal. So most importantly, being safe in the environment and trying new things, and also trying stuff and learning from their mistakes so they can, in future, they can go on. So yeah, that was all I had.
That's it. So we're still within the project at the moment. So we've obviously due to COVID, we've sort of obviously not been able to sort of do as much sort of delivery this time, and the activation grants that we have out for the organisations have been sort of put on hold at the moment. So thankfully we've been able to extend the project now, and so we'll be carrying on until sort of between March and May 2022. Which is sort of really good for the organisations. We've still been able to support the organisations throughout the sort of COVID and lockdown. But yeah, we can sort of then sort of now begin to build on the great work that we've done, and they've all been sort of been able to help out within the community during COVID, sort of within their different communities to provide sort of support and sort of access to different services that their communities need. So yeah, so that's it. On that, so I'll stop sharing.
Emma and Sam, thanks very much. That was really interesting. Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions. I should say at this moment in time that people who are watching, I believe you haven't been able to get access to the question icon. That's why I've not been seeing the questions. And I think we're asking people if they do have questions that they raise their hand with the icon, I think, and we can get them that way. So that's a technical point. Okay, Emma, just one for you at the moment. you've been involved with the London Borough for quite a number of years by your bio, and you're delivering a number of projects. What's the unique features of this one that separate it out from the others you've done? Do you think what are the sort of standout differences and qualities of it?
I think for us, it's sort of the cohesion side, because even though we're sort of as a healthy lifestyles stroke sports development team that we used to be sports development. Yes, it came as a sporting project, but actually sport is the smaller part. It's we're using sport as the sort of the tool, but actually it's sort of the cohesion side of bringing those different communities together, and sort of trying to sort of break down those barriers. I mean, for example, one of the projects that we were able to run last year was a cricket festival, and bringing in the two cricket clubs who have notoriously don't talk to each other, have never had to play each other because they were in different leagues, but they just didn't get on. So actually being able to sort of bring them together to have a festival, so bringing sort of different activities together, but then it sort of culminated in them actually playing a match at the end and enjoying each other's company, and sort of that's something that can then carry on post project. Going sort of further on into the future after the project has finished. Yeah,
interesting. Sam, a question for you. What surprised you the most about? Obviously, you must have had some impressions before you sort of came onto the project, and what surprised you the most about your involvement in it?
So I mean, when I came onto the project, I had no idea of what it would be, and so when I came on and they kind of gave me the role of being coordinator and kind of running Barking Dagenham with Samir, it was almost like a shock because it was my first ever role. But I think it was such a good thing for me personally, because when I came into the role, I learned all these new skills and stuff, going to meetings, kind of writing emails, and it really helped me personally. So I think the aspect of just kind of coming into the role and really learning everything really helped me, and it really kind of pushed me to do better in my own kind of job.
Yeah, good. Samir, opportunity to bring you in here. Would you like to add anything in terms of your experience and your involvement in the programme?
Yeah, sure.
I can hear you, yeah.
Brilliant. So my role is I essentially support Emma, Essex Cricket, the Youth Sport Trust, and obviously, most importantly, Sam, engage with those groups. And I think the thing I'd add is that it's this concept of parallel lives. Cricket is the theme, but it's about encouraging and connecting to those organisations who maybe wouldn't historically have engaged in projects like this, and clearly building relationships with them over time and developing a confidence and then practice this as a model to develop social action planning that then they can use, as Sam mentioned, with legacy development to them within their internal structure and help them with actually, does sport and physical activity have a part to play in what we're doing, whether we're a faith group or we're a traditional sports organisation, and are there people out there that we could be working with that we've never that might have been also potential beneficiaries? What we're doing, we're running a cricket festival or a dance session where we're both sharing a building, and actually we've always seen these people, but we didn't necessarily know we have commonality, but you do. So I think part of it's a lot around actually encouraging groups to look at the wider context rather than focusing on being a racehorse and only looking ahead. It's a natural silo-orientated mindset. Breaking boundaries is about that whole bringing people together, but through common interests.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. I do have a question here, and Louise, are you still with us? Louisa, are you still with us? I've got one for a joint question here. You might be on mute, I think. Yes, hi, welcome back. Hi. You can't escape just yet. Okay, so this is a question. I can't tell you who it's from, unfortunately, because the question function is not working, but I can read out the question. This is both for Louisa and Emma, or Emma's team. And the question is, what would the speakers say have been the key reasons for success, and perhaps challenge what they've experienced with their projects? So the key reasons for success and the biggest challenge for the success of those projects? We'll start with Louisa.
Okay, so we start with the positive. So I think the success for us has certainly been about sticking with it. So it started as a pilot back in 2013, and as a team across the southeast, yes, I'm kind of the regional lead for it, but it's a team effort across all 7 active partnerships. And I think that team effort and also the fact we've stuck with this agenda has made sure that we've been able to develop this audience and provide support for them over a period of time. And then obviously other people have started to see what we've done, and we can build the audience that way and also build more support for it too. In terms of challenges, I think one of them is around kind of the long-term funding for anything like this. So at the moment, the way we run our project is, as a region, we invest in a social media kind of manager who was a female coach herself, but also has the expertise to run social media effectively for us. And so we invest in that as a region and provide that additional capacity. And I think without that, that would be a real challenge for us in terms of how this project is coordinated and developed.
Emma?
I think probably for me, I mean, this is sort of my opinion, it's probably been the challenge and the success. I mean, the challenge has been sort of getting to the organisations and getting them involved and sort of getting their leaders. But once they are involved, that's then been the positive, because it's actually they're able to then sort of get sort of where they've been able to apply for funding through the activation grants. I mean, we have had one round, obviously, as I mentioned already with COVID, the next round has sort of been put on hold for now. But actually, they're getting the ideas, and the young people have been able to put their thoughts across, and then actually they will be able to sort of run these projects for their communities, but then bringing sort of their neighbours in and sort of other groups and organisations in. So challenge to sort of recruit them, but actually once they're involved, that's been the positive of sort of being able to change within the community. Obviously, I don't know what the two Sams think. It's not Sam, is it?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me,
agreed.
Yeah. I think for me, the positive for me was being able to build the trust for these relationships with the community organisations, and being able to trust them and kind of building that initial relationship. Because when you're working on the ground with these projects, if you have that kind of communication and kind of you're speaking to them more often, it's a lot easier to kind of run projects and be engaged with them. So I think that was a kind of key for me to, like, when I first started the project, just to kind of engage with these community organisations on the ground and build their relationships initially. And I think a challenge for me was, because the project was so new at the time and it was my first job, the team, so Emma and Sam, had to kind of not only learn the project but train me up, and I had to kind of learn the same thing. So that was kind of the challenge at the start, but it's all good now.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions here. They're coming in now.
One thing to add, David, Sam and Emma, we realise
getting to people and recruitment is obviously key. What have been your more successful communication systems? Maybe Louisa first.
I think for us, kind of highlighted our most successful communication systems have been the 2 platforms that we focused on. But those communications, actually direct messaging has been quite a key thing. So direct messaging via Facebook and direct messaging via Twitter, where coaches looking for support can speak to us directly without needing to broadcast their question necessarily. And we found that that's quite a key thing for female coaches in terms of that confidence and that willingness to post opinions and things. And I think getting to the right people that way has supported us, but also then at a local level, having this information that is almost a kind of key. So Project 500 as a support tool to then recruit within local communities to run projects and offer this as an additional support has been something helpful to us too.
Emma or Sam?
As I say, I go to Sam and Samir, because they're the ones that have been sort of the ones doing the sort of most communicating with the organisations and young people. So off you go.
Yeah.
I think definitely similar to what Louise has experienced. What we use social media in its various forms, because that's a great way to connect to some of the organisations who maybe aren't naturally as accessible. So pre-COVID isn't that easy. And playing with the model, So we have had to do a nature of that, finding out organisations. And what does help is that I'm a sports coach with my own community organisation outside of this job. So for me, I kind of understand the journey they're on and when's the best time to ideally speak, or just saying, do you mind if I come down and see a session and have a chat then around that? Because these guys sometimes wear different hats. They're not necessarily working full time in a provision. So it's about being adaptive to where they're at, when they're at. Also referrals, if we're winning over and working with projects, they tend to sometimes know of other ones, or they may have heard of one through the community network they're in or whatever. So I think there's no one size fits all, but what we've done is with the groups in year 2 that we were working with, we did some social media and just general survey stuff, just pick the phone to them and ask actually, how do you want to be communicated with? And we've used that as well as a bottom-up approach rather than assuming this is how they want to be connected to. So that not only new organizations get supported with that knowledge, but also the existing ones don't drop off because they don't have time to read an email that Sam or I have sent out.
Great, thank you. Another question here for you. Again, this is for Emma and your team. How do you find using cricket as a tool? As it's often not the most popular sport amongst young people and can be seen as boring. Not me. I'm not saying that, but this is the question from the audience.
That was probably one of my worries sort of when we were first approached. But then it's sort of, yes, it's just, in theory, you could say it's using the word cricket. So, I mean, we've got dance companies that are sort of signed up with us. So actually it's utilising something that's cricket based, but actually, you know, could they do actions within their dance of cricket? I mean, the project was brought also sort of on the end of sort of the Cricket World Cup. So whether it was sort of looking at different teams and utilising countries that have taken part in the World Cup and looking at their culture. So it's bringing the culture together. Do we have sort of family picnics that, you know, bringing families together, again, sharing food and things, but actually there might just be a simple cricket game in the background. So it's sort of not using, it's sort of using all aspects of cricket and not just sort of utilising the, sort of, if people see cricket, they might think of the 5-day test that might be seen on the telly, but actually no, it's sort of how can we bring it as a bit more fun together. Sorry if there's any cricketers out there.
I've got a few more questions here before in our last few minutes here. I'll direct this one towards you, Louisa, first of all. What would you say have been your most popular and impactful qualifications workshops that you've offered?
I guess because we don't necessarily offer directly qualifications, no. I think probably workshops would be the thing that has gone down well with us. Something that we learned actually was that webinars went down really well pre-COVID, now that everybody does them, but before kind of COVID, we actually found that they work really well for female coaches. You know, we'd get in the chat box, I'm signed in, but I'm just putting my kid to bed, I'll be back in a minute, that kind of thing. So actually we found that the format of delivering kind of webinars worked really well for female coaches, and it's something that we've continued obviously kind of through lockdown. And again, the most impactful ones for us have been about kind of the self-care, looking after yourself as a coach, as well as you know, upskilling you as coaches. But then again, some of the other things around simple things we did this year earlier on in January, which was about how do you keep your participants coming back when the weather changes. So, you know, simple as that, but thinking about introducing kind of the process of behaviour change, introducing that to coaches to understand what new participants are going through. And I think that's that went down really well with us, and actually we were able to take some of that content and then share it with our audience, you know, the ideas that the coaches brought up in the webinars. So I think for us, the format is key. So kind of webinars that people can access at an appropriate time, because that was the other thing. Don't put it at 7 o'clock because that's bedtime. So put it at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and then more women could actually access it. So it's something we learn and how to deliver.
Question here for both of you. Given the importance of focusing on different communities, do the panel feel there is enough diversity and breadth of experience in the agencies that make funding decisions?
Ooh.
I'll let you go first, Emma.
Oh, thanks.
So is there enough diversity and breadth of experience in the agencies that make funding decisions?
Oh, that's a tricky. I mean, I suppose looking on it from our point of view, it's from where we've got the funding for this project. Then it's quite an easy one to say yes, because obviously they've from sort of the work that Spirit of 2012 did with the England Cricket Board to sort of look at the different areas that we're having and looking at the different communities there, to sort of then sort of being able to sort of come up with the different areas that they were looking at to bring their funding to the project. Then yeah, you could in theory say yes. I would guess that's not the same across in a lot of the different funding organisations that are out there. So I suppose it could be hopefully we might be able to use this as a sort of a learning curve for them as well. Sort of with all the different evaluation that we'll be doing throughout the project. Actually, then that might help different organisations that are providing funding. So that's again my opinion.
Thank you. Louisa, now you've had a time to move that one over.
I think it's difficult. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't say it's just about funding decisions. I think it's about decisions. So in terms of where we invest in kind of coach development or leadership development, qualification opportunities and things, I think that's where perhaps we also need to consider the diversity in those people that are making those decisions, because actually, we have come a long way from where we were in terms of, blended approach to learning and that kind of thing. But actually, does our qualification system, for example, encourage a diverse workforce? I'd argue that it didn't. I think we're trying to move it in the right direction, but I think kind of funding for qualifications or training needs to be considered in terms of is that training, or is that the only training that's available, and could we be better at being more diverse with that as an opportunity? So I think, yeah, of course we can always have a more diverse kind of panel when we're looking at providing funding, but we also need a kind of diverse way of thinking about how we're qualifying, educating and training the workforce, whether that's a female workforce, whether that's people from disadvantaged backgrounds that haven't had that opportunity before.
Yeah, entirely, yeah. Okay, the last question is going to be from me, I think. Obviously, the next few months looks like it's going to be a challenging few months, not just for sport and the workforce, but for obviously the whole of the country. And you're both probably very conscious that you don't want to see your gains sort of diminished in the next few months. What do you think you can do in the next few months with your projects to sort of maintain the good work that you've achieved so far with all the COVID activity going on? What's going to be, what are your thoughts for the next few months in terms of to ensure that you can still deliver on what you're trying to achieve? Emma, your team first. You can always give it out to one of your colleagues.
Say the Sams can answer this one, because they've been, as I say, they're the ones that are doing the work and communicating with the organisations. So.
Yeah, I mean, for the next couple of months, it's been the same for the last 6 months.
You want to have a go?
Oh,
Nope.
Yeah. So for the next 3 months, because obviously quite a lot of our work is online and in the ground, and we're going out and meeting organisations and kind of putting events on in person, it's been a bit weird to kind of transition over to online stuff. But I mean, I think we've kind of found that balance now, where we're kind of going to bring, I don't know, let's say we bring 2 organisations together online for a quiz. So we're still getting that same impact. We're still bringing people together. And we've had ideas of like kind of having Q&As with Essex cricket players and bringing people on and like letting them connect. We're going to make all our city leadership events and all our kind of our city leadership events and our kind of projects online, and we're going to run them all online. So last year we did our city leadership event in kind of every like champion who comes together. So this year we're going to look at how can we do that online and have that same impact and still kind of get that community cohesion across but online. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's doable, and I think we're going in the right direction for it.
Samir, would you like to
just to add on there, David?
Yeah, sure.
I think the main thing is listening. It's having transparent communication with those groups and how they're getting on. Because I think well-being, it's great that we're working on those young people who are our social action leaders, but also it's that continual engagement that we've done through COVID about how are you, well, it's all great that you've got a job and it's all great that you've got an organization, but are you okay? And what does that mean to you? And allowing them, if they need it, to be connected up to other people, organizations, take the jargon out, people who are on the same journey, to just remind them sometimes that you're not on your own. And it is an extremely challenging time for the world, as much as in Barking and Dagenham. So I'm very big on, and Sam and I particularly, about, do we need to push back with Emma's support on the partnership, because groups need a little bit of time. They need a little bit more time away from the project as well, because with risk assessments constantly being adapted, venues under threat of closure with reopening or closing, we also are just trying to just listen to the community much more than ever before. And that helps us then adapt, I think, a better provision overall. So that does feed into them through their leaders. That were the point previously about funders and diversity. Well, if we don't listen to people at this period in the world, actually, this is an opportunity to truly understand what people require. So that's fine. But then there's, just like Sam said, podcasts we've been doing. We're just playing with the model to see what else we can achieve for those who do want to engage, but also those who can't get online. We're hearing what do they need, either from their organizations or from us. It could be just sending some face masks out because they need that in their daily life, or working with Essex Cricket, who are doing a few initiatives to promote their chance to shine provision, so that young people who can get out have access to something that is safely being run. So a lot of listening.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Louisa, finally.
I think I'd echo a lot of those comments around listening. It's certainly something that we've done throughout the kind of pandemic and what we did at the start, but then it's something that we've kind of based our whole approach on, is engaging with our audience based on their needs, and that we'll be there all the time that they want us there, and providing that support. I think what we're looking to do as a region is to actually develop some localized communities. Obviously they'll be virtual to start with, but if they can then move into perhaps some face-to-face meetings when it's safe to do so, actually connecting more localized communities as well to deal with some of those local issues, particularly if there are restrictions for particular areas coming in. So it may be something that we look to do going forward. But again, just recognizing, rewarding, and telling everyone you're doing a really great job. And yes, we know it's really hard, and similarly, running a club myself, being a female coach, you kind of relate to those experiences that people are having at the moment. And actually listening into our podcast about returning to coaching was really helpful to me personally. And I hope that that's, if we can continue to do that and share people's experiences via podcasts or via webinars, then we'll get through it together rather than people feeling isolated. So I think echoing the points that have already been made about realizing that this will take time to come out of the other side, and actually coaching might not be top of their agenda at the moment. There's lots of other things to happen, but we need to still be there in the background, gently providing that support as and when it's needed.
Great, thank you very much. Well, listening was the buzzword there at the end, and I'd just like to thank everybody for listening to this workshop. But equally, I'd like to thank people for talking, and I'd like to thank Louisa from Kent, both Emma, Sam and Samir from Barking and Dagenham for talking as well. Really interesting insight. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Please do tune in to some of the other sessions that are going on both today, Wednesday and Thursday in Active London. And I'll say goodbye and thanks everybody for taking part.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, Louisa.
Bye, nice to meet you. Meet you.
Thanks everyone.
Stay safe all.